Hey there everyone, welcome back to an Advective weather video. Today we're going to be talking about Cyclone Mal, which is expected to impact Fiji in the next couple of days. It's going to pass by or directly make landfall in Fiji during that time, and that's going to greatly vary what the impacts could be for Fiji. We'll do our best to break down what those impacts could look like over the next couple of days for you guys. Keep an eye on RSMC 90, that's the Fiji Meteorological Center, in order to get more information on this storm as time progresses. We're going to go over a few scenarios today. It'll become more and more certain which scenario happens as we get closer to landfall, or the closest approach, depending on what exactly happens. For now, know that the system's expected to peak near Fiji, and it's likely to become a Category 1 system on the Saffir Simson scale. That's the global scale. For those of you in Fiji, this is the scale more familiar to you, the Category 2 rating on the Australian scale. That's what most of you guys go by. Finally, damaging winds, heavy rainfall, high waves, those are the three major impacts to keep an eye on with this system as it moves by. So let's first talk about the weather setup. The system is currently in a good environment to strengthen, low to moderate wind shear. That means that there's not too much disturbance happening with the system, not too much interference with it being able to organize. Sea surface temperatures are also quite good, but this is all going to change here very soon as a trough is going to sweep up this system. That basically means it's going to latch on to a larger system, and that's going to catapult it southward with time. That's going to drag it into much lower sea surface temperatures and much higher wind shear. You'll notice those lines on the map, those lines with numbers on them, the 15s, 20s, 25s, that's wind shear. Greens are favorable, yellows are pretty neutral, reds are unfavorable. So you'll notice here that the system is going to be moving into that more red area with time. That's going to mean that wind shear is going to be unfavorable. As you move south as well, you'll notice sea surface temperatures. Those are the solid shades below the lines. Those are pretty warm for the storm right now. 28 degrees Celsius is pretty good. 26 degrees is what you want at a minimum for a tropical system. You'll notice that it's going to be moving into 26-degree waters shortly after passing by Fiji, and then after that, temperatures are going to tumble pretty quickly as it moves southward. You can't see it on this graphic, but temperatures are going to get well below 15, even 10 degrees Celsius. Regardless of what exactly happens here and what the semantics look like, make sure you're paying attention to what's going to happen in your local area. And again, that's why you should keep an eye on RSMC 90. They'll have a pretty good idea of what's happening. They'll be able to give you additional information. Speaking of them, here's their forecast for the system. Category 2 is what this system is right now, according to RSMC 90. Now, that's a new upgrade from the system. So, yeah, Category 2 on the Australian scale. It's a tropical storm on the Saffir Simson scale, likely to peak as a Category 1. But the system is expected to maintain Category 2 intensity as it makes its closest approach to Nadi, Suva, the islands there in Fiji. And you'll notice that cone of potential landfall or potential passing. So this is where the center could be, that cone of uncertainty. That's not where impacts are expected. So if you're in the cone, you could take a direct hit from this system, and you'll notice there with that Category 2, that red shaded wind field towards the center, that's where they say destructive cyclone winds could be. So just make sure that you're prepared for what could be a more damaging storm. It's not going to be anything catastrophic or super bad, but it's going to be bad enough that it could put a solid dent in things before it does move farther south. But again, a direct landfall is certainly possible. However, that is not the most favored solution at this time. Those in Nadi and Suva also in a cyclone warning for the system at the moment, and that again is mostly due to the fact that you're going to be getting tropical storm force winds from the system most likely, according to RSMC Fiji. Let's jump into the Joint Typhoon Warning Center official forecast. This storm is expected to peak very close to Fiji. Unfortunately, that's when conditions are best. However, Fiji is likely to get at least tropical storm force winds, but maybe not cyclone force winds. So even though this will peak at closest approach, that doesn't mean you're going to get the very worst of the impacts. It's certainly possible as the storm could make landfall. However, for now, we're expecting it to pass just to the west. Again, that could change. Prepare as if a landfall is going to occur, but just know there's a real possibility that this does miss a bit to the west. Missing does not mean no impacts, though. Tropical storm force winds, again, are likely. We're going to go over some other impacts that are possible later as well. So cyclone force winds, those are possible. That's 75 miles per hour or greater. And the storm movement will reduce rainfall. That's a piece of good news because the storm's going to be moving relatively fast. Northern Fiji, you guys are going to be the ones that will expect the highest waves. Those could be up to 5 meters, especially in a direct hit. And it should also be noted that both forecasts have this system hitting Fiji or making its closest pass around 6 a.m. Wednesday. Conditions will really begin to deteriorate around 6 p.m. on Tuesday, and conditions should improve markedly by the time we get to around noon, maybe 3 p.m. on Wednesday. So it's going to be a pretty quick system. It's not even going to last a day. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be preparing, because it still could be damaging and impactful. Let's now move on to some other impacts. We've talked about the winds a lot. Here's the rainfall. Now, this is courtesy of the Access model from the Bureau of Meteorology, and you'll notice that this is the worst case scenario that a model has depicted. And it shows up to 170 millimeters of rain falling over land. However, it has over 200 millimeters of rain falling over water. So if this does make a direct hit, some areas could see 200 millimeters of rain, perhaps locally higher due to terrain, mountainous terrain, things like that. However, if it does move a bit farther away from here, areas may not even see 80 millimeters. So I'd be preparing, especially if in a flood-prone area, for significant rainfall up to 200 millimeters, perhaps even slightly higher. However, make sure that you know that if that doesn't happen, that was a part of the forecast. That's a part of what we're expecting. Preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, that's what we suggest to do here. And especially with the uncertainty and the possibility of that much rainfall, I'd be preparing as if that's what's going to happen. So let's now talk about what you can do here. Get moving when a storm threatens. This is all courtesy of the United States government, but it applies anywhere in the world. Make sure to protect your home. That's covering windows, securing doors, and loose items. Loose items in particular is very important here. I don't expect that the winds are going to be strong enough that securing doors will be necessary. However, debris could cause problems for windows, so I'd still be securing those for sure. Determine sheltering options and consider your pets, so make sure that you know where to go. If you're more inland and you think that wind is going to be a bigger issue, then make sure that you know where your safe place for wind is. That's going to be the lowest level of a sturdy building in an interior room. You're going to want to get to higher ground if flooding becomes a major concern. If you're in a situation where both become concerning, whichever one's the biggest threat, that's what you want to act on. Make sure that if you're planning on evacuating, which I don't expect is going to be happening too much here, that you have your supplies ready to go for that. Make sure to inform your neighbors. If there's someone you know that doesn't seem like they're very connected with the news or with what's going on, be sure to, give them a knock on the door, let them know, hey, there's the cyclone that's on the way. Make sure that they know what's going on so that way they can be the most prepared they can be. And finally, if for whatever reason Fiji does issue evacuation orders, if this goes catastrophically wrong and the storm strengthens a whole lot more than we thought, impacts become a lot bigger than we thought, make sure that you follow those instructions as well. Again, that's why I suggest following RSMC NADI, Fiji Meteorological Center, in case something like that does end up happening. Find it quite unlikely in this case, but if it doesn't happen now, it has happened before and likely will happen again at some point in the future. During the storm, make sure you know your safe places. That's what I was talking about for water and wind. Water is higher ground, wind is lower ground. Have a way to get weather alerts and forecast updates. Mobile phones tend to be pretty good for that these days. Make sure you download an app of some sort that'll be able to keep you up to date. The Fiji Meteorological Center website is also an excellent place to do that. Keep in mind that impacts can be felt far from the coast. If you're inland, that doesn't mean you're safe. The wave impacts won't be so big for you. However, strong damaging winds and some flooding rainfall are both certainly possible. Make sure to listen to local officials and avoid travel unless ordered to evacuate. Finally, after the storm, few things. If you've evacuated, only return home when directed it's safe to do so. Again, that's not something I'm anticipating is going to happen too much here. Make sure you know once you start cleanup that there are going to be some hazards. Power lines are going to be down. That could be an issue. Floodwaters could be an issue as well. You don't know what kind of debris, animals, things like that are going to be in there. Make sure that you're also being safe during cleanup. That means taking care of yourself, drinking lots of water, making sure you're well nourished, making sure you're taking care of yourself during the cleanup. And make sure if you are using a power generator to keep it out of the home, outside, away from buildings. This is to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. And make sure that you're prepared for the fact that communications will likely be down after the storm in some areas. So make sure to get that communication done before the storm for what an action plan could end up being. Finally, for those of you that are not in the Fiji region, I know something that's been kind of a headline for you guys out in the United States, North America area has been this area of interest in the Atlantic. It's slowly been going up in its chances for development, currently has a 70% chance according to the National Hurricane Center. Now, if it develops, which I'm not so sure it will currently, if it does, it's probably not going to be overly strong. It's going to get stretched out. It's going to get picked up like a trough. by a trough, much like Mal was. And for this system, fortunately, it's not going to be allowed to strengthen very much before that happens. It's going to get disrupted. It's going to have dry air. It's going to have very unfavorable wind shear. The only thing going for it will be those sea surface temperatures for a time. Regardless of development, Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, um, Dominican Republic, Bahamas, and even Bermuda, you guys need to be watching out a little bit for this, mostly just due to rainfall and flooding concerns. But that's going to be possible because of that big old trough anyway. So whether this develops or not, that's not going to matter too much when it comes to your flooding concerns. Could matter a little bit when it comes to some damaging wind and storm surge impacts. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, and we'll publish another video in regards to this system if needed in the near future. Well, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. We're going to be back with more content more consistently here over the next few months as things die down in the college semester, as well as we start to create some process improvements that should make these videos significantly easier to make. So thanks again for watching, everyone, and we hope to see you in the next one. Hope this was useful. Leave a comment down below if you have questions or join our Discord server, and I'll be happy to answer them. All right, talk to you later.